Hi, I'm Dwayne Brown. Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, Mexico's most wanted drug lord on the run. An intense manhunt happening now for El Chapo. The scramble to find him before the trail goes cold.
Thousands of volunteers ready to serve homeless veterans in San Diego. I'm Amitha Sharma. The annual event offering a hot meal, help with housing, and hope. Plus, the Force Awakens at Comic-Con. From stormtroopers to Superman, the wow moments from the largest pop culture event in North America.
All right, killer whale milk.
It's the stuff that helps baby killer whales grow hundreds of pounds in a short amount of time. The new mom at SeaWorld who may help save an endangered species. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Hi, good evening. Thanks for joining us. Federal prosecutors here in San Diego say they're standing by to see if Mexico needs help finding one of its most wanted drug lords. Joaquin El Chapo Guzman escaped from a maximum security prison outside Mexico City over the weekend. KPBS Fronteras reporter Jean Guerrero says Guzman actually used a method he pioneered to bring drugs into the U.S.
Guzman used a state-of-the-art tunnel to escape on Saturday. It was lit and ventilated, like many of the cross-border smuggling tunnels his Sinaloa cartel made in Southern California. Prosecutors here say the impact of Guzman's drug trafficking stemmed from his penchant for tunnel making here through a soft soil called caliche.
We've discovered numerous tunnels that are very sophisticated, not unlike the tunnel that was found by Mexico.
The big difference is the size. The tunnel out of the prison is much longer than any of the 7 found along our border since 2010. Guzman faced charges in San Diego and a host of other U.S. cities, but Mexico declined to extradite him when he was captured last year. At the time, Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto said letting Guzman escape again would be unforgivable. Now he says this second prison break is an affront to Mexico. Tijuana media outlets say Guzman's escape is evidence of collusion between authorities and organized crime leaders. And now the Associated Press reports U.S. drug enforcement agents warned Mexico of plans for a prison break 16 months ago, but they didn't have specifics. Jean Guerrero, KPBS News.
Back in jail, a new report shows more than 1,800 people who were in the country illegally and who were released from local jails were later rearrested for other crimes. The ICE report released today says the rearrested immigrants were freed between January and August of last year, despite requests from federal agents to hold them for deportation. That report follows a high-profile case in San Francisco, where a man is accused of killing a woman earlier this month. He pleaded not guilty. Authorities say he was released from jail despite an immigration detainer. Grounded by a drone, another sign that unmanned devices are the new danger for firefighters on the front lines. Authorities briefly grounded air tankers that were fighting a wildfire in Riverside County yesterday after a drone buzzed by the flames. Planes fighting a 35-acre fire next to the San Bernardino National Forest were grounded for about 8 minutes. It was the 4th time in the last month that a drone got in the way of firefighting efforts here in California.
With a hobby drone, we have no communication with the operator. We can't talk to them and tell them they're in the fire area. So we've got to ground those aircraft until law enforcement can track that person down and get them out of the area.
Drone operators who fly without permission over wildfires face fines. Go for it. That's the message from the NFL to San Diego leaders who want to move forward with an environmental study on a new home for the Chargers. The comments are part of a city report released today ahead of tomorrow's city council vote to review a $2.1 million request to cover the environmental study. City leaders want the report finished in time to put the stadium project before voters in January. Chargers spokesman Mark Fabiani called the timeline impossible. San Diegans can air their views Wednesday on the environmental report. There's a public meeting scheduled for 6 p.m. at Qualcomm Stadium. Getting ready to remove the transgender ban, Defense Secretary Ash Carter says Pentagon leaders are finalizing plans to allow transgender individuals to serve in the military. Transgender service members shared their stories last month at the Navy's first Pride event on the West Coast in Coronado. Carter is creating a working group to conduct a 6-month study on the impact of lifting the ban. It would end the last gender or sexuality-based barrier to military service. Preparing to serve hundreds of homeless veterans in San Diego, Stand Down has thousands of volunteers who help with medical care and spend a few nights off the streets. Amitha Sharma has more on the annual event that has set the standard for outreach efforts around the country.
San Diego County has the second highest number of homeless veterans in California, trailing only Los Angeles. For many of these veterans, an annual event called Stand Down is one of their few chances to put aside their daily hunt for food and shelter and have someone else give them hot meals, help with housing, and health care. Joining me are Phil Landis, President and CEO of Veterans Village of San Diego, and Liz Diaz, Resident Manager of the Welcome Home Family Program for Veterans Village. Phil, let's start with you. Stand Down started 28 years ago. Now it's taken off nationally. What was the idea behind Stand Down?
Well, that's a really great question. We had two gentlemen that were working with Veterans Village at that time, and they would look around our community and they would see a lot of homeless veterans under our bridges and in our parks and at the ocean, and think, you know, when they were on active duty, when you take a unit off the line, so they're no longer facing the enemy, they stand down. And that means you have an opportunity to rest and refit. And they thought, wow, let's give our homeless veterans an opportunity to stand down from the streets for just a few hours and then see what happens. And of course what happened was that they were surprised at the number and then what we're going to do. So it's a question of, we have all these veterans here, let's provide services, let's give them an opportunity to change their behaviors, to get what they need, and to get on with their lives.
What does the longevity of this program say about the state of veterans in this country?
Well, I think if you go back, you know, into our history of this country, for instance, in the Civil War, they called what we now call post-traumatic stress, you know, soldier's heart, because that's what got broken. I think the elements of trauma, whether they are, you know, our current generation, or they go back to the Civil War, or they go back 2,500 years, the effect on that trauma on the human psyche is the same. And so as long as we're going to be involved in combat, you're going to have homeless veterans.
Liz, you work at Veterans Village of San Diego, but you were once homeless. How did you and your family end up on the street, and how did you get back on your feet?
I'm an addict, and I'm recovering from drug addiction, and one thing led to another. I lost my job, my husband lost his job, and we became homeless with my daughter on the streets for 2 years. And then we found Stand Down. We were staying in a sober living, and on the news I heard about Stand Down, so we decided that's where we were going to go. We found out about the Welcome Home Family Program. There were things I had to do, and they accepted me into the program.
Now, women veterans, as it turns out, are 2 to 4 times more likely to end up on the streets than civilian women. And yet last year, of the 960 veteran participants that were at Stand Down, only 57 of them were women. What is Stand Down doing this year? What is Veterans Village doing this year to bring more women to the event? Either one of you.
Well, I think that outreach is important. I mean, you have to make women veterans aware of the fact that they are welcome, and there is a lot of that. What we found is that if you ask a homeless woman veteran, you know, are you a veteran, oftentimes they will say no. But if you ask them if you've been in military service, they will say yes. So they don't think of themselves in those terms of being a veteran oftentimes. And it's kind of scary, you know, you're coming into this Stand Down, what's a Stand Down? And but every year, you know, we seem to see the numbers of women veterans at Stand Down increasing. It is the fastest growing segment of this population.
Now, veterans officials, federal veterans officials, have backed off a 2016 goal of ending homelessness among veterans. What do you think of that?
Well, actually, their initial goal was 2015. Actually, I don't think you're going to do it. It's a great goal. We should be motivated and directed in spending resources to achieve these objectives of ending veteran homelessness. Not just veteran homelessness, but why should there be a single homeless person or family in America? That always is incongruous to me. But no, you're not going to end veteran homelessness, not as long as we're involved in warfare.
Liz, very quickly, you were once homeless. How does it feel now to be back on your feet and helping other homeless people?
It's pretty amazing. You know, the women who come into the Welcome Home Family Program with their children, they look for that hope, and I'm hopefully help giving them that hope.
Liz, Phil, thanks so much for coming on the program.
Oh, we're honored.
Welcome.
A first-of-a-kind study on killer whales at SeaWorld San Diego is underway to help researchers determine how ocean pollutants like plastic and other contaminants affect the health of young mothers and their calves. Nothing like a little water to cool off these student campers, where the main attraction is still the killer whale shows at Shamu Stadium.
We have Kalia Amaya, who was just born in December.
This giant tank is home to 11 whales, and the largest weighs nearly 10,000 pounds. But it's their endangered cousins in the Pacific Northwest researchers are worried about because of toxic pollutants such as DDT and PCBs in the ocean water.
No one has ever been able to look at the transfer of these pollutants from a mother to a calf via the milk, and also looking at the baseline contamination in the blood.
Trainers and researchers from the National Marine Fisheries Service got their first breast milk sample from Kalia, including an ultrasound. They want to measure the health and risk factors for declining populations by comparing them to those held in controlled environments like SeaWorld.
Research has looked at harbor seals and harbor porpoise for the most part. No one has ever been able to look at killer whale as far as milk and blood transfer of these pollutants.
The milk study will be conducted over the next several years at SeaWorld. SeaWorld San Diego saw its attendance drop by 12% last year after the documentary Blackfish criticized its treatment of killer whales. The park hired a new CEO and rolled out an aggressive marketing campaign this year. A special delivery for new mothers at IBM, the tech company says for women who are traveling for work, it will cover the delivery of their milk to babies waiting back home. This starts in September. Women make up 29% of IBM's workforce. The delivery perk follows the trend for tech companies who are trying to attract and retain female employees. Apple and Facebook said they would cover the cost of freezing eggs for female workers last October. It's back. Even though gas prices are sliding around the nation, $4 gas returns to San Diego County. Analysts say a shortage in oil and other components used in refining California's unique blend of less polluting gas is one of the reasons for the price jump. This does mark the first time the price of a gallon of regular gas has surpassed $4 a gallon since July of last year. It's a new game planned for more political equality, especially for ethnic groups in Chula Vista. City Council there will vote tomorrow on a plan to divide the South Bay city into council districts. KPBS associate producer Maria Elena Castellanos shows us how politics may play out in the county's second largest city.
In the past, Chula Vista City Council members could live in any part of the city. It was even possible for 2 or more members to live in the same neighborhood, and they could be elected by all city residents. But in 2012, Chula Vista voters passed Proposition B, meaning from now on, city leaders must live in different parts of the city and be elected by residents who also live in those neighborhoods. Those in favor say it gives people who feel left out a chance for better representation, especially people on the city's lower-income west side.
If there's a page number...
Phil Sines, a political science professor at Southwestern College.
it's about time that the western side has a better chance of having better representation, in that now they have someone who lives in their districts, who uses the roads, the public services, who can identify with the constituent group there, and they're guaranteed a seat at the city council.
The west side of Chula Vista has some of the city's largest Latino populations. On the east side, residents have higher incomes and their homes are newer. It's also where you find the city's second largest underrepresented group, the Asian Pacific Islanders. It's also where there was the most conflict about where to draw the new district lines.
In English and in Spanish.
Jerome Torres was the chairman of the commission, charged with the task of creating the boundaries for the new districts. He says moving a boundary line by even 1 or 2 streets can dramatically affect the district and its voting age population, also known as CVAP.
When you start rearranging the lines between districts, you fundamentally alter that CVAP ratio between race ethnicities, between the Latino, Filipino, and Asian community, or the African American white community. That's what drawing the map is all about.
Torres says some of these groups started the process together as one coalition, but politics quickly divided them.
This coalition had a fissure that 2 camps broke out. One was the labor and Latino camp, and the other one was the Filipino Asian American camp. And they basically went their separate ways because they had some fundamental disagreements about how best to create the districts.
Those disagreements became obvious at the meetings to create the new districts. The commission wanted to create 4 council districts. On the east side, both groups fought over certain neighborhoods, and the Asian Pacific Islander Coalition was determined to keep their voters politically unified.
Because every election time is in space.
One speaker for the Asian Pacific Islander Coalition was Salvador Itos.
I strongly believe that the Filipino American community, as well as the larger Asian Pacific Islanders community, has much to contribute to further enrich the cultural, economic, and civic life of Chula Vista. For these reasons, our API community should be kept together in one district and not split apart where the district lines are drawn. Thank you very much.
Southwestern College and its adjacent neighborhoods was also a prize worth fighting for.
Community of interest.
Humberto Peraza, who is also on the Southwestern College board, spoke in favor of a map supported by organized labor.
And I'm being concerned about what I'm hearing in the community, that it belongs to one particular community. It does not. Southwestern College belongs to our region. It belongs to multiple cities. It belongs to the whole community.
In the end, the commission's final map was a compromise. The new map split the East and West Council districts partially along Interstate 805. On the east side, the Asian community was concentrated in District 3, which also won control of Southwestern College. The commission decided the first elections would be in District 3 and 4, set to start in 2016 to benefit historically underrepresented groups, Asian Pacific Islanders in District 3 and Latinos in District 4. With 4 council districts, the Chula Vista mayor would be the tie-breaking vote on the council. There's no guarantee the change will produce better representation. But for now, Tino Martinez, a 36-year resident from Chula Vista's west side, is hopeful about the city's future.
We're very excited for the future of the Southwest. We believe now with districting the entire city, the Southwest will be able to brew somebody that lives and knows of all of our needs.
For KPBS News, I'm Maria Elena Castellanos.
Tomorrow on Midday Edition, we'll have more analysis on Chula Vista's move to district elections.
I'm Judy Woodruff. On the next NewsHour, reaction from Athens as Europe decides whether to accept Greece's pitch for economic relief. That's Monday on the PBS NewsHour.
The fans are gone, but the buzz remains. Comic-Con took downtown San Diego by storm. Thousands or tens of thousands of fans indulged in pop culture passions. Amita Sharma shows us the big winners from the weekend.
Just in case Comic-Con withdrawal is setting in, we've got one more installment on this year's huge display of comics, movies, and TV shows that descends on San Diego each summer. KPBS arts and culture reporter Beth Accomando and San Diego filmmaker Neil Kendricks are here with a wrap-up. Beth, of all the events at Comic-Con this year, what stood out for you?
There's only one event you can really talk about, even though I didn't get to attend it. The Star Wars panel has to take the cake this year. They had Star Wars Celebration was a few months ago, and a lot of fans were thinking they're not going to do anything that big here at Comic-Con. But man, they brought out the entire cast: Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher, Mark Hamill, and then after the Hall H panel, everyone got led by stormtroopers to the back to get a concert outdoors of the John Williams music with fireworks. I mean, everybody got a lightsaber too, so there were like 6,000 lightsabers in the air. And I had a friend post on Facebook. He said, "I met my wife, I got married, and these are the 3 best moments of my life."
My God, the fans must have been over the top.
Oh, it was crazy. People were waving their lightsabers. When each actor came out, people were yelling like, "Luke, Luke, Han, Han," you know, and it was just crazy.
Neil, what were some highlights for you?
For me, the highlight was meeting Congressman John Lewis, and he was at the convention regarding his book, March, which is a graphic memoir. What's so special is that this book captures the mood and atmosphere of the civil rights movement from a first-person perspective. For those that might not know who John Lewis is, he's the last surviving speaker from Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech. He spoke that day, and in this series of books, it's going to be 3, it's a trilogy, it's his experience, and it's translated as a comic book.
And what were some of the key points that he hit?
Well, I just wanted to meet him. I mean, here was a living piece of history, and it's not every day that you get to meet someone who was in the inner circle of Martin Luther King. And to make a comic book, this brings up a whole point of like why comics are relevant, is that he knows he can reach an entirely new audience. He can make history come alive by simply telling the story as a graphic novel. And if he's cognizant of that as well, you know, no, politicians aren't necessarily as hip to pop culture, then it really tells you that the art form has really been elevated.
And speaking of comics, each year Comic-Con hosts what are called the Eisner Awards. Tell me about those awards.
The Eisner Awards are named after Will Eisner, who is a groundbreaking cartoonist and comic book writer. And this year there was the highest percentage of women nominated and a lot of women winning, and also just a diversity in the kinds of comics that were winning. Across gender, across age, across race. These 4 young women won for Lumberjanes, and they were just so surprised and so happy. And the morning after they won, the booth, Boom Studios, that had the comics was like rushed, and they sold out of Volume 1 of the graphic novel collection and all of the first issue. And the Eisners really helped draw attention to comics, and if you are a smaller comic book publisher or writer, it can really make a difference between people noticing your work and not, or your work even getting into a library or a bookstore.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit more, Neil. You have been going to Comic-Con since the 1980s. How big of a marketing tool has Comic-Con become for new projects?
Well, I think Comic-Con is the go-to destination of anyone in the popular arts. Now, that means comics. That means if you're trying to get a film done, if you are an aspiring author, this is a place that you want to go. In fact, on preview night, I was talking to a former student who went to the portfolio review and actually got some job interviews lined up. And I was just on the preview night, so you can imagine the number of people who were meeting people in the industry through the course of the 4 official days. In terms of how it's grown, how it's changed, I remember the days back in the old convention center where it was much more low-key, although you had more access to a lot of the artists that you came to see. And I remember as a kid running into Ray Bradbury, just wandering through and getting a bunch of his books signed, just impromptu, seeing Matt Groening manning his own table back in the days when he was doing Life in Hell, and so forth. So a big change, maybe not as much access, but in terms of a doorway, if you're an aspiring artist, that's definitely improved.
And Beth, how much attention do fans get at Comic-Con?
Well, I think the Star Wars panel proved that for some studios and for some people, they really value the fan interaction. But I've also spoken to people from DC Comics, and they said, you know, this is the one real chance out of the year where we have to interact face-to-face with our fans and hear what they have to say. And they value that kind of feedback because they want to sell more comics, they want to reach more people. And so I think it does make a difference, and I think they do value what fans have to say.
And we're going to have to close it there. Beth, Neil, thanks so much for coming on the program.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
From Comic-Con to counting down to the Special Olympic Games in California, the final leg of the torch run hit the state capitol today. Olympic athletes carried the torch. Governor Jerry Brown showed up to support them. Later this month, the torch will be used to light the cauldron at Memorial Coliseum in L.A. 7,000 Special Olympians from around the world will compete.
This is one of the ways that people of profound differences can find their common humanity. That's what's powerful about it. The transformational effect of competing, of winning or participating, and all that camaraderie, it is powerful.
And the torch run is scheduled to come through the San Ysidro port of entry on Saturday. Good weather for it. Mild summer weather on tap for San Diego this week with a slight chance of some sprinkles on the weekend. 70s by the beaches, morning clouds turning to sunshine by the afternoon inland with 70s and 80s there. More sunshine expected in the mountain areas with 70s and 80s. And it's feeling hot in the desert with temperatures there hitting 107 degrees. Here's a quick look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. On Morning Edition, investments fall short of expectations for the California Public Employees Retirement System. Why experts say the disappointing returns are no reason to panic. That's tomorrow on KPBS Radio. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thank you for joining us. Have a great night.